What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Deep Dig of Sports Pod. I'm your host, Drew, with my other host over there.
What's up? It's D.
Guys, we got a special little treat for you. It's Chiefs week. We have a special guest, Charles Robinson from Arrowhead Addict is on the show. He's going to help us break down this matchup, get into a little bit of conversation about maybe the AFC West, the NFC West. We'll see where we go from here. But Charles, why don't you go and tell them where they can find you, where you coming from, and what you've been working on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for first of all, thanks for having me on, guys. This is awesome, and kind of catching up with you guys before. It's I think this is going to be a nice little conversation. So, yeah, I mean, you hit. I'm a contributor for Arrowhead Addict, mainly just a writer. I kind of have a face for the blog, so appreciate you guys getting me a little exposure on YouTube. Hopefully, there's no glare from my head in the video, but. I've been with them all season. Started in the preseason with those guys. I was with a couple other blogs before, but I like to bring a little bit of a different spin to Chiefs coverage, put a little personality into it, try to make it fun for the reader and stuff like that. He's still with kind of a background of I played offensive line in college. I've kind of got that mindset, and that's kind of how I look at the game. So I definitely. I defend offensive linemen a little bit. I defend the run game a little bit more because that's kind of my background. But for anyone who would like to follow me, you can follow along on Twitter. That's where I put most of my content out and where I do most of my Chiefs related opining, I guess you would say. But my Twitter handle is just CRob5769. And you can find our stuff at, arrowheadaddict.com. So.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, we appreciate you coming on the show. We'll be sure to put all that info in the description too. And I didn't know you were a former offensive lineman. Are you watching that Kelsey Brothers podcast lately?
Dude, that's like the best thing on the internet right now. The Heights.
Yeah.
Yes. New Heights. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love it. I mean, having one of the Kelsey brothers is, couldn't ask for a whole lot more other than having both Kelsey brothers, but we'll take the one we got right now. I'm happy with, I think Travis Kelsey might pan out.
Only time will tell.
Yeah. We'll see. TBD.
Yeah, we got a fifth round draft pick. We're hoping pans out for us too at tight end.
So far, it's trending in the right way.
Yeah, we're definitely two of the more tight end rich franchises in the league. So we got that going for us.
Yeah, it's a weird mirror of both teams have one of the best tight ends in the league. And we've both been in like similar positions, played each other a lot of big games. I know we were talking about, is this a rivalry? I feel like the fans kind of give that vibe. Like, how are we feeling going into this? Is this like a angry rivalry? This is more of like a friendly rivalry matchup where we fully respect each other on each side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. I mean, I think for me, now I was sharing with you guys before the show, like this is definitely a rivalry, but like personally, if I see the Niners playing on TV, as long as they're not playing the Chiefs, I'm probably going to pull for them. I mean, there's a lot of similarities with the franchises, and it goes back to really, kind of the sharing of players in a lot of ways. I was telling you guys, some of my first memories watching sports are watching the Chiefs back in, 92, 93. And who was our quarterback? Joe Montana, right? Got him from the Niners. A couple other guys, Steve Bono, Elvis Gerback, got those guys from the Niners. Even coming into the more modern era of Chiefs football, when everything kind of started turning around for the Chiefs was when we hired Andy Reid, and who'd we bring in? Alex Smith, right? We get Alex Smith, and then we trade you guys D Ford. D Ford had some successful-ish season with you guys. Listen, I don't like D Ford either because I was at the AFC Championship game against New England when your guy, Charvarius Ward, picks off Tom Brady. And I'm turning around, I hug my dad, I hug my brother, I say, we're going to the Super Bowl. We're going to the Super Bowl for the first time in 49 years. And I look down, and my boy that I got season tickets with is like, dude, there's a flag. was like, oh, who's it on? He said D. I'm like, oh no. So D Ford offsides is kind of notorious in Chiefs Kingdom. But even, more recently, like, we got Jerick McKinnon now. You guys have Tarvarius Ward. Like, we have similar, you guys won the Trent Williams sweepstakes and we lost out on it. So there's a lot of parallels with, players. And I think for the most part, I think it's a rivalry for sure. And you obviously, elephant in the room, Super Bowl 54. I'm not going to bring that up a lot today, but like there is a rivalry aspect to it, but I think it's friendly, man. I think, we all probably dislike some of the same opponents, and when we get together, it's always fun. So, I think it's definitely a friendly rivalry.
Yeah, and coming from the Niners perspective, I think that's 100% right. I think that there's a lot of respect for the Chiefs and what the Chiefs do. I think there's a lot of common enemies. Now Russell Wilson is in the AFC West. It's a guy that the 49ers just notoriously hate. He always would, even if the Seahawks sucked, he would always find a way to pull out the win against the 49ers. And it's like, why, Russ? Why are you cooking us? And now I think more than anything, what it is, it's like, there's respect. You want to see the Chiefs win, but it's also in the back of my mind personally. It's like, if they're going to be a dynasty, please let us get our first Super Bowl win forever first, and then become a dynasty after that. Don't become the Golden State Warriors right in front of our eyes, and we're left as the Oklahoma City Thunder with Durant, Russ, and James Harden sitting here by ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's always, I think, a moment that brings Chiefs and 49ers fans together is when you guys beat the Raiders. So, thank the Chiefs for that. I don't think a lot of 49ers fans appreciate the Raiders.
We're happy to do that whenever. I mean, I think we'd play them if we could. We'd play them 4 or 5 times a year. So
that'd be 4 or 5 wins. How they're going right now.
That'd be unfair though. That'd be stat padding on our part. So we gotta keep it fair.
You'll see them in playoffs.
Will we?
Probably not.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't. That's a reach. I don't know. We're probably more likely to see the Chargers than the Raiders, but I don't know. Either way.
Well, both teams, Chiefs and 49ers, are in the playoff hunt right now. I know you're coming off a loss to the Bills, but we kind of want to get into what are the main storylines? I know 49ers fans probably aren't closely following the Chiefs, but what are some of the main storylines for them leading into this game that, are going to be floated around on Sunday?
Well, I mean, a lot of what's going on, here in KC is surrounding who we have coming back, right? I mean, we've Willie Gay, who is a pretty good outside linebacker for us, has been suspended for the last 4 games for an issue that occurred last year during the playoffs. So he'll be back, or should be back. Andy Reid's been kind of mum on his status this week. Kind of just playing kind of maintaining his poker face, saying we'll see how he is, and if he's ready, he'll go. I'd say Willie Gay will be ready to go, which should only help Nick Bolton, who's having a good season. And if you ask half of Chiefs Twitter, if you ask the other half of Chiefs Twitter, he's a bust somehow in his second season. I don't really understand that for a guy who's 5th in the NFL in tackles. But should have Brian Cook, who's a pretty solid rookie safety, coming back for us. Rashad Fenton is iffy. He may or may not be back, but it's still up in the air whether or not we'll have our first round pick, Trent McDuffie, back as well. Depending on who you listen to or what you read, he should be good, but he's still on the IR. They haven't elevated him yet. So I think it's, for us, it's a lot about, who's coming back off of injury and really coming into this game after last week and some of the things that we've gone through early in the season. It's going to be a pretty big litmus test for our offensive tackles to see, how they can handle the 49ers front and their pass rush. So far hadn't been great. So, if these guys can, I'll get into a little bit of my theology behind that later on, but if these guys can kind of step up and take on that pass rush, I think the Chiefs have a pretty good shot in this one, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And hearing you talk about what's going on with them sounds pretty similar to what the Niners have going on with all the injuries and offensive line struggles. D, what do you have that 49ers fans are worried about going to this game?
I mean, where are we not worried, bro? Like, there's so much injuries headed into this week. I think now as the week progresses, we're seeing people trending in the right direction, but there is still some pretty big question marks. I believe you said Mooney Ward is one who's it's kind of hit and miss whether he's going to have it. Hopefully, Telenoa Hufunga is going to be able to play coming off the concussion protocol. So that would be a great plus. We know lately he's been all over the field, and he's one of the guys who is just really popping off the screen anytime you watch the 49ers. The D line. So Nick Bosa is trending in the right direction. Drake Jackson on the opposite end is looking amazing. So he is actually tied for rookies with the most sacks. Him and Aiden Hutchinson both have 3. That's a guy that we got in the second round. That was our first pick. So we're looking really, really good. We're on that D line. We're just so stacked. The only thing is in that middle of the line, Eric Armstead has been injured the last few games. Javon Kinlaw is now on the IR. So that the middle of the line depth is going to be tested quite a bit. And we know that historically with mobile quarterbacks, the 49ers have struggled. So we'll see if we can combat, Patrick Mahomes spinning, doing loop-de-loops and getting the ball out of there.
Yeah, definitely. Good. We're going to get some of our guys back this game, but still going to be a struggle. Before we get into the matchups on the field, I kind of want to let's talk about the matchups off the field with the coaching staffs, because Eric Bieniemy is always in the head coach hunt. Like, he's always getting interviews. D'Amico Ryans is a guy for us that he's going to be a head coach next year. I think it's almost guaranteed at this point. So kind of want to take a look at like Kyle's tree versus Andy's tree and kind of compare and contrast these guys. How you feeling about Eric Bieniemy's chances and like what Doug Peterson's doing or some of these other guys?
Yeah, I mean, Andy's tree it kind of speaks for itself. It's kind of become one of those things that, it's almost like it's Belichickian to an extent, right? I mean, some guys venture out from the nest and then end up coming back. But we have Matt Nagy right now as our pass game coordinator and quarterbacks coach. Went to Chicago, didn't work out that well. Took him to the playoffs his first season, but you can blame that on a head coach or you can blame that on a GM that didn't build a roster the right way. Either way, he's back, and I think it's a good addition for the Chiefs, specifically Mahomes, because Mahomes has come out and said like he learned a lot from Nagy in his rookie year before Nagy took the Bears job. So I think that's good all around. Peterson has been, he got a Super Bowl ring with Philly, and now he's coming back around with Jacksonville, and they've been a little shaky. They started out well, but they're kind of falling off a little bit and look more like the Jags we're used to. But overall, Doug Peterson's a good coach. You got Mike Kafka was our quarterbacks coach last year, who's now the offensive coordinator with the Giants under Brian Daboll. So the Giants are 5-1. Their offenses look pretty creative. They're utilizing Saquon in a lot of different ways and really kind of making the most out of a pretty bare cupboard talent-wise offensively. So, I mean, when you can take a Daniel Jones-led offense and get them to 5-1, that's pretty impressive. And obviously Daboll has a lot to do with that because he's, the architect behind this Buffalo offense that's just thrashing people. Yeah, I mean, Bieniemy is kind of a touchy subject in KC, especially, after the AFC Championship game last year and a couple instances last season. And then the Colts game this year. He's been one of the guys behind one of the most successful offenses in NFL history for the last 4 or 5 years as running backs coach and offensive coordinator, or he's the worst thing that's ever happened to the entire city of Kansas City and should be fired. But, you mentioned it, Drew, like he's in the mix every single year, the last 3 off seasons of like, who's going to be a head coach, which coordinators are going to get head coaching jobs. And Bieniemy's name is there, but he's just not landed it. And I mean, I think there's something to be said for how direct and kind of intense he is as an individual, and his interview style. I think there's some stuff that's gotten out about him, maybe not necessarily being a player's coach, but when all the stuff kind of went down in Indy, you had guys like Jamal Charles and Jeff Allen, former Chiefs players, coming to bat for him. Jason Dunn, who didn't play for Bieniemy but is still close with the Chiefs, was a tight end back in the 90s. Came to bat for him. You've heard Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes talk about how affectionate they are, with him, and Tyreek Hill, when he was here, seemed to like EB. So I don't know if everything that you hear is true or all the rap that, he gets is necessarily warranted, but it kind of is what it is. And, it just hasn't necessarily found a good fit yet. But I think, if the Chiefs continue to have the type of offensive success that they have, he'll land a job eventually at some point. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the EB thing without getting too deep into the weeds on that.
Did you? So like we had talked, I don't know if it was last week or a couple weeks ago, me and D talked about D'Amico Ryan's potential landing spots. Do you have any Bieniemy like that's the destination he could go to or should go to next year?
I mean, it all depends on what jobs come open, man. I mean, the Carolina job is interesting. But it depends on what are they going to do with the trade deadline? Is CMC going to be there? Are they going to have any type of quarterback at all? The thing is, if any job that comes open, the cupboard's going to be pretty bare. So any new job that he takes is probably not going to be the best type of situation for him. I would say, that's a tough question to ask. I don't really have anything pegged for him as far as that goes. I think the best job that might come open, which I thought would be open at the beginning of this year after Dak went down, was Mike McCarthy losing his job in Dallas. But Cooper Rush apparently is
saved the season.
Yeah. I mean, is he the next Tom Brady? I don't know. Many are saying that Cooper Rush is the next Tom Brady.
That's reserved for Bailey Zappi. Okay. Bailey Zappi.
Oh, dude. Yeah. What is zapping in the New England, dude? I mean, yeah, poor Mac Jones, man. He was the talk of the town last year. And now Bailey Zappi's just out here roasting fools. And who knows?
Not to get too far off base, but such a weird situation where like a rookie quarterback makes a Pro Bowl and the next year the coach won't commit to him in a press conference. Like they're asking, is Mac Jones going to be the guy? He's like, we'll see. We'll see. It was like,
and that's so funny because most of the time people overcommit to a fault to rookie quarterbacks where they put them in bad situations and shoot their confidence one way where it's like, dude, I can't get anything done because I've never seen this game before and I don't know what's unfolding in front of me. Where Belichick's shooting Mac Jones' confidence the complete other way because he's like, okay, I think I have this figured out, and now I don't know if I still have my job. So that's crazy, man. That's a wild situation. But that's probably just Belichick playing chess when everyone else is playing checkers. I'm sure Mac will probably get his job back, but Zappi's made it interesting for sure.
And even before this, so just again, not to go off too far off base, but even before that, when Mac Jones got injured, he was seeking another opinion because the Patriots were telling him it's going to be like 3 or 4 weeks. And he was like, I don't know. I have no problem sitting out longer just to make sure. And I want a second opinion. So I think that also rubs Belichick the wrong way. If you're not a quote unquote team guy and you don't do your job.
Yeah. Oh, no, definitely. Yeah. That's a way to fall out of good graces with Bill for sure.
Yeah, he definitely has.
I don't know him on a first name basis. I don't know why I called him Bill. I'm just feeling comfortable right now. You guys are very welcoming. So
you're like, I'll call him up after this and see what he's feeling about Matt.
Here, I'll text him right now. You want me to FaceTime him?
Hey, Mr. Coach Belichick, how are you?
Yeah. Bill,
All the
what's
respect.
up, boy?
You see the player try to hand him the football during the game? He just brushed him off. He's like, get out of here, bro.
Like, what are you doing? Who are you?
What a character. But D, you want to go? I know we talked about D'Amico a lot last week, but you want to kind of get into Kyle's assistants. There's a couple over in the AFC that are putting some work lately.
I think that Kyle Shanahan does a really good job of choosing assistant coaches that are almost like the opposite of his personality. I think that's one thing in the locker room that's kind of lost is Kyle is a very almost negative guy. I remember the story that he tells where he's like, I'm going house shopping with my wife, and she like starts to cry. And she's like, "Why do you hate every house that we look at?" And he's like, "What are you talking about? I love this." And it's like he's just nitpicking, like, and I think that's just like who he is as a dude. So he has to get other guys like Robert Saleh, who's very high energy, very player friendly, like let's go, and Mike McDaniels, who's just a different type of cat. And even too, Anthony Lynn. Anthony Lynn is a very player friendly coach. I think he does a really good job of choosing the different energies to be around him. And these guys are just hard workers to begin with. So he takes them to another level and has them showcase their personality. So you have guys like Robert Saleh, who's now doing really well with the GM, Joe Douglas in there, making all the decisions, and Little LaFleur backing him, who also came from Kyle. So he has some tricks up his sleeve. Not only is his brother a head coach, he was under Kyle. So I feel pretty good about him. If the Jets continue to trend upwards, maybe he's going to get his name thrown in the coaching carousel. And then going back down to Mike McDaniel, man, if that Miami Dolphins team could, not even team, the organization could get their stuff together, this team would be good. They were on track to do really well. Now it's been hindered with some injuries at quarterback, both to Tua and to Teddy Bridgewater, and there's just different things on the radar. But he's a guy who we see the impact that he had on the 49ers run game specifically. Everyone was raving about him, and we are lacking that this season. There's just no rhythm, there's no pop, and I think now Kyle is like, okay, well, who's going to be the next guy to really step up? Anthony Lynn is there. A guy who might be a little bit under the radar is Brian Greasy, stepped down from Monday Night Booth to take over as quarterback coach. And I think that given that he's been around the NFL since he was a kid, much like Kyle Shanahan, he's played in the booth. Like he's been in the Monday Night Booth, so it's not like he stepped away from football completely. So he knows the game, and I think that give him a season or two, and I think he's going to be a powerhouse, and maybe even looking to step up more as an offensive coordinator. But I think that it's tough when you're the new guy in town to really kind of give your opinion around Kyle Shanahan. But Kyle does allow you, once you're one of his guys, to really showcase yourself and your skills. So I think around the league, they're doing really well. We'll see if it continues.
That's got to be a wild thing for Greasy, right? So, I mean, because he was the quarterback in Denver under Kyle's dad when Kyle was a kid, and now Kyle's his boss.
I think that shows like how much he respects Kyle, though,
definitely
as a coordinator and a coach.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I'm still on my take. I'm preaching DeMeco Ryans next year will be the Houston Texans head coach. That's my take. I'm sticking with it. He has the connections. They're perfect for one and Lovey's a one and done.
They're gonna cut Lovey Smith. I think they just wanted an adult in the room, and they're like, all right, you're gonna have at it. You get at least 2 seasons. I think they're gonna roll with that. I think he's gonna go to the Chargers. If Staley continues to tank, I think that defense is too good. They're gonna need someone, and D'Amico's gonna be like, I'm your guy. I can take this defense to the promised land. Give me all these weapons. Let's go. So that's my pick. I'm thinking Chargers.
The big question with the Chargers is, can how absolutely loaded their roster is outpace how questionable Brandon Staley's decision making is?
That's definitely the story, because that the game they won where he goes for it on 4th and 2 in the middle of the field and almost hands them a field goal to lose. Like, what can
that's
this
like
guy,
every game?
Can he punt? Like, do they have a punter?
I don't know. I mean, they punted in KC a couple times, but I mean, dude, he's something else, man.
I'm hesitant to go D'Amico the Chargers because it just depends on how much they're willing to pay Sean Payton, because Sean Payton will take that job if the check is right, to quote Takeoff from the Migos. Now you want to get into a little bit on the field matchups. We'll start with the offense. I don't even think we have to compare the quarterbacks at this point. Like Jimmy G is no comparison to Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he's technically our backup quarterback because Trey Lance was the starter. So I think we could just move past that matchup. completely.
Can I? What are you? I want to hear your guys' opinions on that. Are you guys sold on Trey Lance?
Oh man.
I
Go ahead.
So prior to the season, I was all in. Like, we have to put our chips in the middle of the table. We've given up so much for Trey Lance. We need to get rid of Jimmy completely, and we need to focus in on Trey Lance. Obviously, that didn't happen, and I think with the play calling and how everything was, I think Kyle always knew he had a safety net there. He always knew he had a guy that.
Oh, there's
like,
a reason they didn't trade him.
Yeah, so it's like, hey, like, even if we're gonna run this guy, our offensive line is a little bit shaky. It's okay. Like, we got Jimmy G back here. We know Jimmy G, like, his number one trait is getting out the ball fast.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think that Jimmy's gonna get 49ers to the playoffs. If they make a deep run, he's on the last year of his contract. They're gonna have to re-sign him for at least a couple of years. And then it's a toss-up. Like, I don't know. I think if they take him, depending on how deep they go, I think it's going to have to be Jimmy G. But I would much rather it be Trey Lance, just to see like what we can do given how much we gave up for Trey Lance. But Kyle just doesn't, I guess, want to give him the keys to the offense. But there's just always a little. If he were to give him the Jimmy Garoppolo offense, I think he'd be able to execute it, but he doesn't give him the Jimmy Garoppolo offense. We've seen this in his last couple of starts where it's like completely different play calling. And it's like, Kyle, I think Trey Lance can do a play action boot if you give it to him. And it's just not like something in Kyle's mind's like, I can't do it. I just can't. I can't do it.
Yeah. So I think it's weird because like leading into this season, we were like so on Trey Lance and everyone's just confused. Like, you would think you draft a quarterback number 3. It's his second year. You're saying he's your star quarterback or your starting quarterback. If that veteran you can't trade, you would just cut him, right? Like normally another teams, they would just cut that guy and like let him walk. So like you can really commit to this guy, and they never did that. So that was like a red flag. And then we went to training camp and we saw like me and D went to training camp and we saw Trey Lance throw, and he had some plays where he struggled, but you could see the arm talent was there. Like he had some very special throws. And then we get into the preseason, I think he was picking up the offense. I think he was doing things that we didn't see last year in his like limited time. And that gave me hope for like in the beginning of the season, I was not expecting him to be able to run the offense. I wasn't expecting him to like win a lot of games, but by the end of the year, if he played 15, 16 games, I think he would have been pretty good. And then leading into next year would have been pretty great. At this point, I'm a certified Jimmy hater, but at this point, I would rather go with Jimmy G next year than Trey Lance. To me, no fault of Trey Lance, but he sat his whole first year. He sat in college because like COVID, and he's only played that one full season. Like how long ago is it now? Like 3 years. And then you're gonna he's hurt this year, so make it like 4 years. And then you want to get rid of Jimmy and give this guy the keys next year. Like even if he was ready, Kyle wouldn't be ready to give him the keys to this offense. So in my eyes, no fault to Trey, but Trey is technically a bust because the time he's wasted his rookie contract at that point. He's gonna be in his 4th year of his contract, or what? Third year of his contract, barely learning the offense. So I think Jimmy's our best way to go next year. This year, we'll see the rest of this. It's a long season. We still got to see if Jimmy's gonna be throwing touchdowns or throwing interceptions the rest of the way.
And I think it's kind of, I think it was right guy, wrong time. Like, I think once Trey got hurt, there was leaks from anonymous players that like, hey, we might have a better chance now. Like, so the locker room, for some reason, they love Jimmy Garoppolo, and so that might be their guy. And even though Trey Lance could have all this potential and could be a great quarterback, that the locker room is Jimmy Garoppolo's until for the further notice.
Yeah. Well, a couple things on outside of looking in.
Give me 1 sec, guys. I got to grab my charger.
Okay, no problem. Dude, Jimmy G just wins games. I mean, y'all have been to a Super Bowl and an NFC championship game in the last 3 years. And I mean, that's not a whole lot of teams can do that consistently. So granted, you guys have had stacked defenses for the last like 4 seasons, and the running game has been unbelievable. But sometimes being able to manage a game and not lose is just as good as being able to go out and like win one firing off, because I mean, just like Mahomes can go and orchestrate like a great comeback, but he can also come out and throw a pick that seals a loss like last week. So
Yeah.
there's good and bad with stuff like that.
You know what like Jimmy's ceiling is, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's always like that wandering eye. Like, can we do better than that? Like, can we get someone who's gonna at least a little up here?
For sure. Well, it's not completely surprising to me that, part of the locker room was still, still behind Jimmy G. Because I mean, there's not a more like handsome and charming quarterback in the NFL than Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, the dude's a rocket. So he's a great looking guy. He just wins games. Me and D were talking about this when you were away, Drew. Like, he just wins games. Like a Super Bowl and an NFC championship appearance in the last 3 years. That's nothing to scoff at. So, I mean, there's worse spots to be in for sure than having your backup be a guy with that kind of track record.
Yeah, and it's definitely a weird situation where I think a lot of fans don't feel great about our quarterback, but they still believe like he can win this game against the Chiefs. Like, he's shown that he can win 100%. In big games.
Yeah. And I mean, quarterback without a doubt is the most important position in all of like American sports, like period. Quarterback's the most important position. But even if you're the best quarterback in the world, if you don't have the team around you to produce a championship caliber level of play, then it doesn't really mean anything. Right. I mean, that's just like, you look at, Tom Brady the last couple of weeks when he's had no receivers other than Mike Evans, he's struggling. That's a terrible example. He's 45 years old. What am I saying? But like
Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers. Who is Romeo Dobbs?
Yeah.
Who's Romeo Dobbs? Alan Lazard is a number 3, right? Aaron Rodgers is back-to-back MVP, and they are like they're ass right now offensively. And thank you for bailing me out of trying to.
You're right there. Right there.
Yeah, dude. I know I was close, but no cigar. but anyway, Jimmy G. There's, like I said, there's worse spots to be in, and you guys do have a championship roster. Everybody might not be on the field right now, but you have a championship roster built around that quarterback that gives you just as good a shot as anyone, especially in an NFC that looks like it's a little bit down this year. So, I mean, that's definitely early season, the first 6 weeks, or, just call it September of an NFL season and beginning of October, there's going to be teams that are, feisty, that come out like the Jets and Giants are, both well outperforming expectation. You got the Eagles are undefeated. They're probably going to end up being there at the end of it in the playoff race because they were there last year. But, some of these teams like that are hovering around that 500 mark, like, Chiefs are at 4-2, the Niners are 3-3. Yeah. Niners 3-3, Green Bay hasn't played well. Tampa hasn't played well. These are teams that ultimately at the end of the year, the Rams they're going to be there at the end of the year because they're eventually going to catch their stride, and it's all going to kind of even out. Like, if we think that we're staring down the barrel of a Giants-Jets Super Bowl, I've got news for you. That's not going to happen. Like, these teams that have been there and know, these head coaches that have been there and know how to get their teams there, these quarterbacks that have been there and know how to get their teams there, these defenses that have played football late into December and into January and know what a long season and a grind is like, those teams that have been there and are proven and are talented are going to be there in the end. It's just kind of, it's always weird getting out of the gates. Last year, the Chiefs were 3-4 after the first 7 games, and it just lost 27-3 at the Titans before they won 10 straight games and ended the season 12-5. So, yeah, I mean, September and the beginning of October, it don't mean everything. Like, it takes a little bit of time for some teams to get going. So it's tough to tell where everybody's going to shake out at the end of it.
Yeah, and I would love to see the odds on that Giant Jets Super Bowl pick. I might want
It
to
may
throw a
be
couple
worth
bucks
putting a
on
future on. I mean, it's
Maybe.
probably like plus 50,000. So
Is
if you know,
Saquon
if you
could
put, like,
carry.
yeah, Daniel Jones, Super Bowl MVP. Anybody
Wow.
got that one?
Man.
Like plus $1 million.
Man.
Yeah, that's exactly the matchup America wants to see. Daniel, your connection is poor alert. And I was like, oh, this is
Great.
fantastic.
Oh,
Glad
you
I'm
guys
paying for
there?
Google Fiber.
You guys were frozen for a while. You guys
No, you're
good?
back.
Okay.
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, you're back.
It's probably my Wi-Fi. Terrible.
It is
Sacramento
100%.
Wi-Fi.
I'm
No,
gonna go
thank
ahead
you.
and say.
Thank you. All right, but we'll go ahead and give you guys the quarterback win on that one. We'll say Patrick
We'll
Mahomes
take
is
it.
better than Jimmy, but the running
We'll
backs and receivers and tight ends, like, you want to get into those. Like, tell me about how you're feeling about the skilled players on the offensive side of the Chiefs.
Okay, so we'll save tight end for last because I think we both have nothing but good things to say about our tight end situations. From an offensive skill perspective, my whole thing on the Chiefs, and it's been proven the way the offense has played so far this year, is the running backs are going to perform how the scheme is called from the beginning of the game. So when the Chiefs struggle offensively, we come out and try to, like, we may run the ball once or twice on a first drive, but we're trying to go down the field immediately. And what that's doing is, you know, we're scheming it up to where the offensive line has to start the game out moving backwards versus digging in, moving forward, being aggressive, gaining confidence. And when they do that, when they start out running the ball, committing to the run, and even not just the run, but kind of an extension of the running game with the quick outs to running backs out of the backfield with, you know, quick screens, you still let that offensive line get moving forward and kind of start pounding the opponent a little bit. And that does two things, right? The offensive line gains confidence and the defense has to be aware of that running game, and they get up in the box a little bit, and they're, you know, it gets them on their heels from a pass rush perspective because you got to respect the run, and it moves the safeties and corners up to try and help with that. Then you take your shots down the field. When you set it up, then you start taking advantage of some of those vertical route combinations that Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy and Matt Nagy can draw up. But when the Chiefs get in a rut, they get it in reverse. So personally, I am bullish on the Chiefs running backs. I'm particularly bullish on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think he gets a very, very raw deal from a big part of the fan base. When, you know, sure, there's time, you know, a couple of weeks ago, there was a swing pass out of the backfield that hit him in the back of the helmet after he looked at it. It's like, why are you doing that to me, Clyde? I'm banging the drum that we need to give Clyde the ball more and feature Clyde more, and he's doing stuff like that. But then he'll go and have, you know, 120 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns. And it's like, this guy is talented. This guy has what it takes, but if you scheme him up the right way, he's not a Derrick Henry. He's not a Christian McCaffrey that's going to change a game by himself just from his skill level alone. But that's why we have Patrick Mahomes. Like, you can orchestrate an offense beautifully with Patrick Mahomes under center, but it's just how the game is called. So I think I'm big on Clyde. I think he's a big time weapon out of the backfield receiving the ball. We got a rookie 7th rounder named Isaiah Pacheco who, like, he runs like somebody insulted his mother and his sister right in front of his face. Like, he is just pissed every time he touches the ball. I think Mahomes it was Mahomes or someone on the offense that said that you know, he runs like he's mad at the ground. You know, he's just stomping so hard. And he's an animal. Your guy McKinnon, I mean, guys, Jerick McKinnon is just kind of the gift that keeps on giving for change of pace running backs. I mean, you can pound it with Clyde and Isaiah Pacheco, and then McKinnon comes in and can just slither through some of these holes these other guys can't get through. He's awesome in the passing game, and extremely underrated facet of McKinnon's game is he might be the best pass blocking running back in the NFL. He is unreal picking up blitzers. Almost every game, there's a highlight of McKinnon just basically upending somebody coming in on a blitz and giving Mahomes that extra like half a second to a second to hit Kelsey or to hit Juju or to, you know, find McCole on a seam or something like that. That's my opinion on the running backs. Receivers have been a little underwhelming so far this year. I know, obviously, the elephant in the room coming into the season for the Chiefs was not having Tyreek Hill, and I think you've been able to tell that they're kind of missing that. this year from an offensive perspective. But again, I think, we did this last year. What people forget is we had to do this last year with Tyreek and go to like a short, more like middle of the field centered passing attack, or we weren't going vertical last year, guys. We weren't hitting 50, 60-yard touchdowns on a regular basis last year like we were in 2020 and 19 and 18. That wasn't happening because teams started playing that too high look against us. So we had to take what was in the middle of the field. So do we miss Tyreek? Yeah, he's a yak machine. You could give him, the Buffalo playoff game last year, you dump it off to him 10 yards down the field and he takes it the extra 60 and you're back in business, right? We don't have that home run threat this year. What we do have is, from a beneficial thing about having the receivers we have is that we have to be a little smarter with how we scheme Travis Kelce open, because really it's Travis Kelce and then the receiving core. So Juju's been great at kind of taking some of that attention in the middle of the field, sucking safeties over to his side to respect him and getting Travis open a little more. And that's really how our passing game is going to succeed this year, is kind of eating up chunks, short crossing routes over the middle of the field. And then once you get those safeties up, having to respect Juju and Travis in the middle. The last couple of weeks, we've had success finding Mecole Hardman on a couple of deep balls, finding MVS on a couple of deep balls. So are the receivers where, we'd like them to be? Probably not yet, but I think the infrastructure is there for that receiving core to be, still what I would consider probably an elite level NFL receiving core. They're not there right now. They're good, but they're not elite. But where we are elite is Travis Kelce. And no offense to your guy, George Kittle, but the best tight end in the game. I mean, Kelce, from a pass catching perspective, I know he's probably not as good of a blocker as Kittle. I mean, definitely not as good of a blocker as Kittle, but from a pass catching perspective, guys, I mean, he's it. And, I know Kittle's been banged up, but the best thing Kelsey's been able to do is just stay on the field. I mean, he hasn't missed a game with injury in, I think, 5 seasons. So that's the cream of the crop right there. And I mean, you can't get a better tight end matchup than what we have this Sunday.
Definitely. And if I was Kyle Shanahan, I would trade anything for Pacheco to be on my roster. That guy, I have Clyde as my fantasy back, and I have Pacheco on my bench because I think this guy, he's going to move up and take some of these touches away.
Yeah, he was something in the preseason. I mean, people got real excited about him in camp when he just trucking people in camp. So it's like, oh man, who's this rookie? Like, this is pretty nice. But I mean, that's kind of a calling card of Brett Veach. He goes out and finds those guys that, Pacheco has the traits of a running back that can succeed in the NFL, but he played at Rutgers. He's not playing with an offensive line that's at any level you can really judge him off of production. You got to judge him off of his skill set and his measurables. And so far it's been a pretty good 7th round pick.
Yeah, definitely. And D, I know on the 49ers side, everyone knows about Debo, everyone knows about Kittle, but how are we feeling about the performance of some of the other guys so far this season? I know if you want to drop a little thing about our diamond pick of the week, we hit 3 weeks in a row. Twice we hit on one of the receivers there.
Our guy, Juwan Jennings. Yeah. So it's with the now play of Jimmy Garoppolo. I think everyone thinks dink and dunk, but they have been throwing it deep. Even last week, we had 2 just dead on dropped right on their hands. But I don't know why Kyle was scheming up for wide receiver 5 in Ray McLeod or tight end 2 with Charlie Warner. I think we have so many skill players. Let's put these guys in the right position. So yeah, of course, Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk is a guy who had 2 touchdowns last week. And I think he can continue on that type of dominance moving forward, especially with just how different him and Debo and Juwan Jennings are. Brandon Ayuk is going to be that guy who runs crisp routes and actually gets a lot of yards after contact just based off of where he's at as far as his body position. We're missing RB1, obviously. Elijah Mitchell's gone. That leaves Jeff Wilson Jr. and now off the streets is Tevin Coleman. For some reason, Kyle Shanahan has Kyle Shanahan guys. And if you're not a Kyle Shanahan guy, you will not play. So He is not. We had I want to say he was leading the yards per attempt in the preseason. Jordan Mason, he hasn't seen the field at all. Ty Davis Price actually played one snap at fullback, even though he was a third-round pick this past offseason. So I think he feels more comfortable with the veterans. So that's what we're going to see. But I would like to see more of a rhythm. Let's get in. Let's establish the run. Let's, get these, the offensive line is pretty banged up, but let's get some of these guys into space. Let's do some screens to Brandon Ayuk. Let's do some screens to Debo. Obviously Kittle's going to eat, but he also has to play left and right tackle at times. So it's just one of those things where they're not going to let Kittle be Kittle because he has to, make up for what we're missing on that O-line, which, I mean, you can't be mad at it that a guy doesn't really care about his touches because he just wants to play football and he wants to play winning football. You got to applaud him for that. But at the same time, Kyle, can we work something else out here? Can we get Charlie Warner to stay in and block? Can we get let's get Juszczyk out there, something, but I think that's an underutilized thing is that fullback that we have, one of the best fullbacks in the league. Arguably the best fullback in the league, Kyle Juszczyk. I think we get him out into space against any linebacker. Really, he's a mismatch.
Yeah, and something that might benefit the Chiefs is last week we played a lot of Willie Snead. He's just out there taking up space. He's essentially just a non-factor in the pass game, and for some reason,
Feed the Snead, baby.
For some reason, Kyle continues to roll him out there over Juwan Jennings when we've seen Juwan Jennings is productive.
Yeah, and even before that, Danny Gray was supposed to be wide receiver 3. One of our rookies from this past draft. He has 4.4 speed. He's a little bit smaller. He's been a little bit banged up this season, but he's a guy who everyone was really excited about. Again, just not a Kyle Shanahan guy. Hasn't really seen the field much, so we'd like to see. Let's see that out there. Let's this guy run a little bit.
Danny Gray from SMU.
Yep.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I kind of had him eyeballing him a little bit. We got Sky Moore in the second round, but Danny Gray was one of those names that you kind of see in a second, third round area of the draft last year. I was like, maybe he'd be a Chief, but
yeah, he's definitely stood out in preseason and training camp. But like I've been saying on the podcast all year, Kyle Shanahan's the Drake of head coaches. He has trust issues. You really have to prove yourself to be in his good graces to see the field. He's not going to trust anyone off the street unless you're Tevin Coleman.
Yeah. Juwan Jennings basically single-handedly won you guys that Rams game in week 18 last year.
Yep.
It's having a third wideout like that with that ability, with obviously Debo. Dude, that was one of the biggest bummers of the offseason when the Chiefs couldn't trade for Debo. But if we didn't pay Tyreek $30 million a year, we're probably not going to pay Debo $30 million a year, even though he's a pretty versatile weapon. But him and Ayuk's criminally underrated, man. That guy is very good.
He's definitely come off a breakout game. But any truth to the OBJ to the Chiefs?
Who knows, man? I personally think we need help in other places. I don't know if that 3.75 we cleared up with Kelsey's restructure is best used on OBJ. That's probably not a very popular opinion in Chiefs Kingdom, but I wouldn't mind trying to make a run at trading for Brian Burns from Carolina to kind of. The pass rush has been a little weak. Frank Clark is, bless his heart, man. He tries hard and he's a great locker room guy. I'm from Southern Missouri originally, so I got a lot of those old bless your heart type sayings. But Frank is a great locker room guy. He has some hilarious sound bites. I love him. I think he's an awesome dude. But what are you doing coming back to play defensive end in the NFL weighing 230 pounds, man? He's just getting ragdolled this year. We have no pass rush. He's his best days are behind him. Karlaftis is putting up some fight on the other end, but I think we need help on the defensive line, whether it's him or maybe making a run at Daron Payne. Or it'd be tough to plug in a new offensive tackle at this point in the season, but boy, Andrew Wiley has had some tough looks this year, and
Oof.
he's a good platoon guy. He's a good swing tackle to have as like your third option, but starting him at right tackle, we've gotten exploited a little bit on that this year, boys. So, I mean, OBJ would be a great weapon to have, and I did just basically call our receiving core mid, for lack of a better term, but I think we need help elsewhere personally. But I don't know. Who knows? I mean, we were in on him last year. We didn't get him, but we'll see what happens. I wouldn't be mad. I just think we need help. I just think we have more glaring weaknesses.
And I mean, that makes sense. Like, okay, well, we could do this, or we could, actually shore up these like holes that we do have. So it's
right. They may not be it may not be as sexy of a pickup, but it, definitely might go a little further in helping us get back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I know both our offensive lines are depleted, but you touched on the D line a little bit. You want to talk about the defensive side for the Chiefs? I'm not really sure what to feel about their linebacking core and their secondary. I know you talked about these young guys on the D line, but how are we looking in the back end?
Back end, I mean, we've been without our top pick, Trent McDuffie, who confirmed has that dog in him since the first week against Arizona.
X-rays show he has that dog in him.
X-rays show a dachshund in his rib cage. He's been out since week 1, so we haven't gotten a great look at him. But camp and the first half against Arizona, he was a stud. And I mean, there's a reason we drafted him. Like he's an animal, and it sucks not having him out there. We're going to probably be without Rashad Fenton again, which, I mean, he's basically just been putting on a clinic on how to get burned deep all year. So I'm not necessarily mad about that, but we are thin at corner right now, which is not a good place to be. I mean, last week during the final drive against Buffalo, we had a guy named DiCaprio Boodle, who I'm sure you haven't heard of, on the field in the final drive of the game. Less than advantageous to be in that spot. He came up from our practice squad last Thursday, I think. So, I mean, it's tough. Jalen Watson's played well as a rookie. Joshua Williams has battled out there, but we're kind of banged up in the secondary, which makes me very nervous against the receiver core you guys have. As far as safeties go, I mean, Thornhill and Justin Reed have played pretty well this year. It's definitely an upgrade from the Dan Sorensen and business decision making Tyrann Mathieu combo we had for part of last year, which is kind of funny. You guys mentioned Juszczyk because I kind of trace Kyle Juszczyk's first touchdown in Super Bowl 54 back as like that's like the patient zero moment of when Tyrann Mathieu started making business decisions and not hitting people anymore on the football field. But I love Tyrann Mathieu. I'm being kind of facetious with that, but it was time for us to move on from him. And Justin Reed's been a great addition. But right now, I'd say our back end's skeptical at best. But we talked about this a little bit before the show, and I mentioned it a little earlier. Linebacking wise, I think we're in the best spot we've been in a while. Nick Bolton right now is kind of holding down the middle, and he's 5th in the league in tackles, averaging 11 a game. He's got I think 3 sacks on the year. So a lot of Chiefs Twitter kind of started piling on him the last couple of games because our run defense hasn't looked quite like it did the first 4 games of the season. But he's been without Willie Gay. Willie Gay is really kind of our best sideline to sideline freak athlete coverage type linebacker. And he's been out, for a 4-game suspension, but he'll be back this week, should be back this week. Andy Reid kind of had some, I get probably more poker face type stuff to say about Willie Gay earlier this week when he's talking about, we'll see how he looks. And, if he's ready to go, we'll get him out there. I mean, the dude's been working out for 4 weeks. It's not like he's been hurt. Yeah. Like he'll be back out there. So, and then Leo Chenal is a rookie. He's played pretty well at linebacker, and surprisingly enough, the guy who came in off the practice squad to replace Willie Gay while he was suspended, Darius Harris, he's flashed. He's had some great flashes in relief of Willie Gay. So the linebacking core is solid. The secondary will be fine once everybody kind of gets back healthy. And I don't know how I forgot to mention L'Jarius Sneed. L'Jarius Sneed is basically what's holding our secondary above water right now. I think as far as slot corners in the NFL, I don't think you get much better than him. And he's deadly when he blitzes too. I mean, he's incredible. So yeah, I mean, if we didn't have Sneed, we'd, probably be in a much different situation right now. But thankfully, he's a warrior. He's an absolute maniac as far as, when it comes to toughness and the way that he plays. So yeah, I don't know. We'll get back to where we need to be, but right now we're injuries are kind of killing the secondary.
Yeah, definitely some guys that are just like, I think stepping up, playing above what their pay grade a little bit that you guys are betting on. Like Justin Reed is nice and L'Jarius Sneed. I think before we continue, D has to take off. He is dealing with the dog situation. So as far as the secondary and linebackers for the Chiefs, I think it's for the defensive line, it's a toss up for me between the Chiefs and Niners right now because the Niners are so banged up. But with Bosa and Drake Jackson going to play this game, I would give the edge a little bit to the 49ers, even with the interior guys that are rotating in, like the Hassan Ridgeways and like the Kevin Givens. Those guys are playing great in the limited time. The linebacking core for the 49ers, I think I got to give us the edge with Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. Dre Greenlaw, I've been harping on this for a while. Like this guy has everything, all the intangibles that you want. He's fast. He's athletic. He's aggressive. He can play the pass and he can play the run. And he's showing it all, like why they gave him a contract extension this season. Like the guy's playing lights out.
Well, I think your guys' linebacker situation is pretty eerily parallel to the linebacker situation you had when you had Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman, right? Because you have Willis, who is the Warner role, who kind of gets all the pub as like the do-it-all middle linebacker type guy. But then, Bowman and Greenlaw are those kind of rangy outside guys who really make a huge impact, especially against teams who, have tight ends like Travis Kelce or George Kittle. You can kind of start to lock guys like that down. And when you can do that, take that outlet away from a quarterback, then, it's dangerous. Your guy, I think I'd give probably the entire defensive advantage in this game to the Niners, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
At all three levels. I mean, our defensive line, I kind of segue into that. Chris Jones obviously is a man amongst boys and probably the second best interior defender in the league behind Aaron Donald. He's back.
There he is.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
Welcome back, D.
We were talking about linebacking cores.
Oh, man.
Yeah, what do you got on your Niners?
Dude, so right now, Azeez Al-Shaair is out. So we've been playing mainly with two linebackers rather than the three. So the two linebackers are, I would say, some of the best in the league. I know you said you have some of the best linebacking, but Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw just fire off to the ball, man. They are heat-seeking missiles. It's awesome to watch. I think they're both really good at protecting as far as looking out as on the run game, but they're both also awesome at pass coverage. So it's really cool to see that middle of the field is just not really affected. The one thing I will say is there have been rumblings that Fred Warner is getting a little too small. He's a guy who, takes karate. So he's just looking a little leaner these days. And he was a little bit bullied in that Falcons game. So something to watch out for if they can, put some hits on him. They were seeing like 2 to 3 yards every time they were hitting Fred Warner. He was getting pushed back a little bit. So that's just one caveat. But other than that, he's obviously an awesome linebacker.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
Like how you're saying there was a couple of guys in secondary you're hesitant on. This week we have a lot of injuries. D, what are you thinking from the corners and safeties position?
I actually felt pretty good with what we had last week rolling out. They did what I was expecting, which was kicking out Diamador Lenore for Emmanuel Mosley. But now Charvarius Ward is going to be, it's a toss up whether he's going to be on the line or not. But I would really, I know this guy is, he might be like a little bit buried in the depth chart, but I would really like to see Ambry Thomas, who, played well down the stretch last year, who did really good. He had the game ending interception against the Rams in week 18. So I would like to see him get a shot, but we have Diamond Lenore, Sam Womack, Jason Verrett is also ramping up. So it's kind of a race between him and Ward to see who's there. I would rather it be Ward, to be honest. I don't really, nothing against Jason Verrett, but he's just a guy who's always banged up, and you just don't know how much you have left in that tank, especially with all the injuries to him. He's a guy who I really felt highly about, but you just hate to see like a guy take that many injuries, and you see that amount of damage to one's body. Gotta let how much left's there,
Yeah, it's like the old boxer that just keeps getting like knocked down and keeps getting back up. Like, give me another one. Like, no, dude, just sit down.
You're gonna have to cut me, Mick.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys seen the new Creed trailer?
I'm not.
You got to check it out.
Directed by Michael B. Jordan and starring. It looks like a banger.
Michael B. Jordan's a stud.
Oh yeah, we're gonna see with Jonathan Majors in there. That's a tough matchup.
Yeah.
But speaking of tough matchup, all right, we broke down each side. Chiefs, 49ers offense, defense. Can we get some predictions for this game? I don't know if you want to throw out final score prediction, but definitely a win-loss. And do you know the odds on this, or who's the favorite? Probably the Chiefs.
It's more likely Chiefs.
Chiefs 2.5.
Chiefs 2.5. All right, so
yeah,
we'll go. Charles, what are you feeling about your prediction for this game?
So here's a fun fact for you guys before I get into my prediction. In Patrick Mahomes' career, he's had an under 50 points while being an under 3-point favorite on the road 10 times. So meaning the spread was -3 or lower, and then the over-under was 50 or under. It's been 10 times. He's 10-0 against the spread and straight up in those games. So not that means anything, but that, if sharp bettors might be looking at something like that. My prediction for this game is I think the Chiefs come out and try to execute their offense a little bit like they did against Tampa and against Arizona, which, as I talked about earlier, is how we get our offense going. With, your guys, the pressure you guys can bring off the edge. We talked at length about Travis Kelce and George Kittle. 2 tight ends that the Chiefs also have on the bench, Jody Fortson and Noah Gray. It actually fared pretty well this year in multiple tight end sets. And I think that's something we're going to have to look at on Sunday to kind of chip and slow down some of this pressure you guys can bring on the edge, especially with the way that Orlando Brown Jr. and Andrew Wiley have been playing. And if we can start out fast up front and establish the run and kind of get aggressive with the interior 3 guys on the offensive line, Joe Tooney, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith, kind of getting a little bit of that mean streak going. I think the Chiefs will find success offensively. The X factor is going to be, can we cover all your offensive weapons with the injuries we have in the secondary? And I don't know that answer, but I think that's going to boil down to, can we generate a little bit of pressure up front on Jimmy Garoppolo and force him to make that turnover, or, force a turnover. The Chiefs are one of the worst defenses in the league this year at creating takeaways. And I think if we can turn the Niners over one time, I think we can win the game this weekend. I don't know. The injury situation is way too up in the air right now to predict a score, but the homer in me would go with the 10-0 trend of Mahomes in that spread and over under scenario. So I'm gonna take the Chiefs in this one.
D.
So before the season, I predicted this was going to be a win. I think that I'm not going to go. So I want to, the homer in me does want to be like, this is going to be a dub. Like, let's go. Like Jim Harbaugh is going to be there. Kyle Shanahan wants to show out. This is going to be like a high pressure game. And we know that the 49ers get up for high pressure games, that this is what they live for. It's such a a high volume team that's been in like scenarios just like this, and they don't want to be shown out and they don't want to be overshadowed. But I just think with the injuries, with the offense somewhat in a little bit of a rut the last few weeks, the way to win is to get up early and to really put the pressure on Patrick Mahomes and keep that pressure there. So with that caveat, if we do not get up to an early lead, I don't foresee this being a 49ers win. But prediction, if that's not, so the only way they win is we get up early, we keep the pressure on Pat Mahomes. But other than that, I think Chiefs win, Chiefs cover.
I'm with you on that. For me, it's 49ers struggling to score touchdowns. Mahomes is Mahomes. Even though our D-line is banged up, our secondary is banged up. Even though I still feel great about D'Amico and this defense, I'm going to go ahead and go with a realistic Niners take here. Chiefs win 28-17. That's kind of where I'm feeling. Can we even hit 21 points as an offense? I don't know. It's definitely been a struggle for the 49ers to get over that 21 point mark. Or if the Chiefs offense can put up 4 scores, it's going to be tough on the Niners. So that's kind of where I'm leaning.
Yeah. I just had this epiphany. I can't come on a Niners podcast and like report back to Chiefs Kingdom without predicting a score. That's just like the softest thing in the history of the world. I know we talked about this being a friendly rivalry, but Chiefs 33, Niners 21.
Respectable.
Cover and the over, and Mahomes goes to 11-0 in those in this type of betting environment.
You heard it here first, guys. If you're a Chiefs fan trying to make a bet, but if you're a 49ers fan trying to make a bet, we hit our Diamond Pick of the Week 3 weeks in a row. Follow us and subscribe on YouTube on Saturday morning. We're going to drop the Diamond Pick of the Week, your best bets for the 49ers on Sunday. We're going to make some more money 4 weeks in a row. Hopefully you guys make money too. Before we end this, I think I'll wrap up this. And then if you have time to stick around, we can do a YouTube exclusive talking about the playoff outlook in the divisions. If you have time, Charles.
Sure.
All right, cool. So we're going to wrap this up here, guys. Check out all this on YouTube, anywhere you can stream podcasts. We're going to talk more. We're going to go into the other teams in the divisions here, AFC West, NFC West, playoff outlook, talk some Russell Wilson, and see where the playoff matchups lie. Follow us on YouTube, subscribe there. Thank you, Charles, for coming on the show. And let them know where they can find you and where you're working right now.
Yeah, check out arrowheadaddict.com for the best Chiefs coverage on the entire internet. And you can follow me personally on Twitter at CROB, CROB 5769. So for the YouTube exclusive coverage, let's ride.
Oh man. You gotta get, if you're an audio listener, get in on this. All right, thanks guys. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Charles.
Thanks for having me, guys.